Alright, so I'm going to be teaching you how to use JUnit with Eclipse. And I'm Casey Powers. Now, JUnit is already built into Eclipse, so that makes the whole process a whole lot easier. So to start off, I'm going to go over these assertions. These are the main ones that you'll be using with JUnit. And so here they are. Starting off, we'll do assert true and assert false. Both of these have one condition plus the message is an option, and they do exactly what they sound like. It either tests if that variable is true, or if it's false. Assert true will continue if that value is true. Assert false will continue if that value is false. Assert equals takes in two values, an expected value and a value that would be returned by a method you're testing. The order of those two is important as well, because the error message returned if the assert fails will not make sense if they're in the wrong order. This uses the equals method, not the equals as seen later on. And then assert not equals is exactly what it sounds like. It will continue if the two values are not equal to each other. Assert null and assert not null are testing if a value is a null value or not. Assert same does the same job as assert equals, except it uses the dot like right here. I'm not gonna bother with that draw menu. Assert not same, again, just uses the equals and tests if they're true or not. And then there's just fail, which causes the test to fail automatically. So now to go on to a example of this. This is a list that I've made. You can see right here. It's pretty basic. The only functions it has are add, length, get, and contains, which obviously adds a value to the list. Length returns the length of the list. Get returns the value stored at a position, and contains tests if a value is already in the list. So to test these, we'll go over here, right click on the .java file, go to new, and JUnit test case, which will get to this menu. This should stay the same as well as most of the defaults, but you can't change the name of the JUnit test if you'd like. I'm keeping it the same, so do not click finish yet, click next, and here we'll select which methods we want to test. So we'll be testing these three, because add is used in all three of those. It'll be part of those tests. So now we click finish, and this will come up. If JUnit is not already on the build path, this menu comes up, and obviously we want JUnit included, so click OK. It'll take us here. As you can see, it's already made tests for those three methods that we are testing, but they're all empty. So to start off, let's test do the test length. We'll do create a list of tests. Oops. There we go. And so to test length, there are a few ways not to do this properly. Obviously, with a new list, the length should be 0. We could do this by doing by using a boolean and assert true. you could say if not equal to 0, then fail. Or we could just test use assert equals with 0 in the length. Now, obviously, if this is incorrect, it will give us much more constructive feedback. It'll say like assert 0 is not equal to what this returns. Whereas these will be much less useful information, so we won't be using those. And if we go back here, you see that the starting value, or the starting length of the array is 5, and then we increase that array's size as needed. So to make sure that works properly, we are going to be creating a list of length greater than 5. So let's just get started. Then test the length each time we add. And then we can just do this several times. Oops. Okay, so we've gotten to 7 here, and that should adequately test that we're adding and the length is increasing correctly. So now, test get. This will be testing whether or not we can retrieve values from the list. So we can say list.add 1. Oops. Now, clearly I could go through again ways to incorrectly test this, such as the assert true with a Boolean operator inside or a if statement. But the best way to do this would be, again, to use assert equals and say 1 dot and then list.get position 0. So let's build up the list a little bit. Then let's test all these positions. And just to make sure that getting a value doesn't change it, let's test it twice. Now let's test the contains function. This we don't need quite as many tests, but just this. Need to add a few variables to test. this, since contains is a boolean, you'll actually be using assert true. Do this for the values inside the list. And also values outside the list, but obviously if they're not on the list it would return false, so and 5. So this is a pretty adequate basic test, real basic test of these three functions. Obviously there are things such as invalid inputs that could be tested, but that's not the point of this demo. So there's two ways to run the test. You can either click here, run as JUnit test, or right click on the test, go down to run as, and JUnit test. Both of them have the same result. So our tests have succeeded. You can see here, runs 3 of 3, no failures, no errors. So that's good, but let's add an error just to see what that looks like. So clearly this should be getting 6, but we're going to be checking for 7. That's just a bad test. But to run the test again, we get an error. Now this bar is an indicator, if you can tell, of whether or not all the tests passed or not. It will only be green if every test succeeds. And so we can see here that it was in the test get. We can go down here and see assertion expected 7, but was given 6. This is also a good example as to why order matters and why using assert equals versus one of the other bad examples is important, because otherwise we wouldn't know what was given or any more info, or if we had the order wrong, then it might be confusing, because it'd say be expecting 6 but was given 7, which is not what actually happened. So we can see here, and if we don't know where that error is, we can double click this and it will highlight the assertion that was the cause of the issue. So that is a very basic tutorial on how to use JUnit inside of Java. Alright, so I'm going to be teaching you how to use JUnit with Eclipse. And I'm Casey Powers. Now, JUnit is already built into Eclipse, so that makes the whole process a whole lot easier. So to start off,